Man, have you ever not been able to sleep? Well, I'm here to make sure you still aren't able to. I can't sleep, which is why I take melatonin. But in all seriousness, this animated horror series is pretty scary and downright disturbing at certain points. So, viewer discretion is advised. I will be reviewing certain videos that I think tell the story of what's happening with the character and giving my thoughts on some of them. So let's get into the video. I Can't Sleep is an animator who usually makes short psychological horror animations with a distinctive monochronic art style, and the videos have little to no sound at all, which I think makes it a lot more scary just because it's so eerily silent. I Can't Sleep has two series within the channel called Don't Get Your Hopes Up and Way Back Home. I won't be covering them in this video, but I'll try to be covering them in the second video. Anyways, most of the videos feature an unnamed goth girl, which the community has dubbed Nia, you know, like Insomnia. Many other YouTubers have already covered the channel, with some being over 40 minutes long, and I suggest you check those ones out too, because they too have interesting takes on what's going on with I Can't Sleep. But let's finally dive into this weird and horrifying channel. In this video, Nia lays on her bed in the dead of night, with her phone next to her on a bedside cabinet. Nia reaches for her phone only to freeze as her eyes go white and blood begins to pool from behind her and black hands shoot out from under the bed, and the video ends. I'm sure that this video is about the fear of what lies under the bed, as many of us had, and we worry about that monster taking us, and it's unfortunate that the monster got Nia. I don't think there's too much in this video besides the fear of what's under the bed, so we're gonna keep moving on. Nia's at a pond and her legs are dangling in the water. Across from her stands a figure that is all black and wears a hood. Scare Theater dubbed this figure as Hood, and I will be referring to him as the same. Scare Theater believes this to be the dark aspect of Nia's personality, and one that keeps torturing her in a part of her mind called the hellscape, which we'll talk about later. Hood enters the pond and Nia quickly takes her feet out of the water and then stares at the water, seemingly waiting for Hood to pop out, but nothing happens. I think this video is about the fear that we have of sticking our feet in the water and being dragged down. But this video also introduces Hood, which I've come to believe is fear, and you'll see what I mean when I talk about it later in my theory. But for now, let's move on to the next section, shall we? In the third video, titled Leave Me Alone, Nia is sitting in a room with the same words written on the wall. Next to Nia is a gun and she grabs it and points it to her head. And in a different shot, we see a figure standing outside her window and looking at her with a wide smile. And then the screen goes black. Now, I'm going out on a limb here, but I think this video is about being haunted by terrible things from one's past that they can't handle, like thoughts and memories that you don't want to remember anymore. Thus the title, Leave Me Alone, as Nia wants the demon of her past, the trauma, to leave her alone. And so she puts the gun to her head, which is, really, really dark. I think here is a good reminder to tell you guys that if you are having thoughts similar to, taking your own life or any other type of thoughts that would cause you self harm or harm to others, please do seek help and know that people do care. So, just a reminder. The video sees Nia standing alone in a room, looking uncomfortable, and every time she blinks, a creature appears for a split second, and this happens 3 times before the video ends. I don't really know what this video could be about, but I think it's more of the terror of what you can't see when you close your eyes, or that something scary can happen and end in the mere blink of an eye. Since I think that's it, let's just continue to move on to the next one. In this video, swords spring out of Nia's head multiple times until the video ends. Of course, I think this is a clear representation of what a migraine feels like, which I can say is very accurate, as I've had a few migraines in the past. I believe this may be a bit personal to the creator, who I can only assume may suffer from migraines. After all, if you draw so much, I do think you can develop migraines, especially if you draw digitally, so there's that. But then again, I'm just trying to be analytical as fuck, so let's just move on, shall we? In this video, Hood appears and gives Nia a present, and when she opens it, she's blasted in the face with a red mist. And a few seconds later, she has her period. Now, I'm not a woman, and I can never know how that feels or even give my 2 cents on the subject, but I can only assume that by the video and what I assume to be Nia's first period, it was painful and quite horrifying to her. Which I hear is usual for most, but again, I don't know. As I've said before, I'm not a woman, I've never had a period, and I cannot understand the pain and troubles that could go through that. But I should note that it's Hood giving her the present, and I believe this may be the fear of the change that comes with getting your period, or the fact that now you have this once a month thing that just, makes you feel sick and everything. So I believe that is what this video represents, but again, I'm not sure. The video is 9 seconds, and in those 9 seconds, Nia is presented as an angel, her hair lighted with black highlights and her heart beats with small wings behind her. Suddenly, it switches to see Nia appear to be in a hospital, being injected with a green medicine in her head, and it appears to hurt her at first before the drugs hit her and she's in a dazed state. This is clearly a sign of something terrible happening in the hospital, more likely a mental health facility, and possibly representing some sort of mistreatment that happened to Nia, or as one theory suggests, the creator themselves. In the video, Nia looks at the mirror and she appears to be extremely tired, and she blinks once, only for the door to open and a figure to appear looking at her from the doorway. The first few seconds made me think about how sometimes I could get out of bed and head to the bathroom only to look at myself and see how tired and terrible I looked. Which, like, come on, it's all happened to us. I believe this may deal more with depression and that the creature in the back may be like the monster and leave me alone, another thing from Nia's past that is haunting her. In the video, Nia turns on a light and two shadows are behind her. One of them forms wide eyes and stares at Nia. Now, this part is a bit wild, but bear with me on what I'm about to say. I think this is a representation of Nia's shadow. And what I mean is that this could talk about the term the shadow, a term made popular by psychoanalyst Carl Jung. He saw the shadow as the uncivilized, even primitive side of our nature, believing that we all have a shadow self, a thing that is generally made up of the parts of ourselves that we deem unacceptable. This means things like sadness, rage, laziness, and cruelty. I also think that this may be related to Hood, and I'll explain why later. The video starts out in a similar fashion to Angel, where Nia is presented as an angel in the sky, only for her to wake up and really be seen strapped down to a table, naked, and hooked up to some type of machine. I believe this may be similar to Angel in the way that this is a fear of the hospital, but instead of being afraid that something will happen, this time it's clear that something terrible has happened, as I'm sure that Nia is hooked up to what appears to be life support. But then that begs the question of why she is strapped down and removed of all of her clothing. Nia may also be in extreme pain, wishing only to die and become an angel once again. In this video, Nia wakes up in what looks like the same hospital room from again, and this time she looks terrified, whereas again she looks dazed and tired. I believe that this is Nia finally coming to and realizing that she is back in the hospital, or that the hospital has continued to abuse her in a much more cruel way. And again, Nia looked dazed and half conscious, but here she seems to be fully awake and terrified, realizing the dire situation she is in. One thing I want to say about this video is that it has 1.9 million views. And when you look at the most popular videos on the channel, it is one of the few that have what I can only say are rather suggestive thumbnails. To clarify, I don't think this is on purpose. I just think that some see the thumbnails and click on it to see what possible not safe for work things are happening, only to get a different kind of not safe for work. Let's move on, shall we? Anyway, in the video, Nia uses the restroom and takes the middle stall. Once inside, we're shown an overhead view, and we can see that the left stall has a corpse in it, and the right stall, we can see Hood again. This might be the fear of using a public restroom and being watched and peeked at by other people, and Hood is the person that Nia fears. Once again, Hood shows up when Nia is at her most weakest and her most vulnerable. In the video, Nia is walking down the street next to a fence, and as she walks away, someone on the other side of the fence is following after her. Nia appears to sense that she's being followed and looks through the fence to see for herself, only for a creature to be looking over her from the other side of the fence. I think this is the fear of being followed or watched when out for a walk. I know I'm quite paranoid when walking down the street in the early morning or late at night, and I also feel like I'm being watched at certain points. Perhaps the creator feels the same way, and thus made this. But again, that's just speculation. In this video, we're shown a red room with cracks in the wall and two large eyes, and a cross at the top. A silhouette passes the wall, and they appear to have similar hair as Nia. And as they pass, the eyes follow them, and they have this static to them as they pass. We are then shown three people tied up, two of them shaking in pain, and the middle appears to be barely alive, and also bears a resemblance to Nia. But I don't think it's her, and I'll tell you what I mean in a bit. Silhouette passes them by, and then arrives at the door that says, "Welcome to Hell." And later it's revealed to be Hood, who's riding an elevator with shaking figures that kind of remind me of the nurses from Silent Hill. As I mentioned back in Underwater, scare theater believed that Hood was the dark aspect of Nia's personality and also Nia's torturer, who brought her to the hellscape to do so. This is that hellscape. But while I do believe this is indeed hell, I don't believe this is the hell we know. But as I've said before, I'll get to that later down the line in the video. In the video, Nia is on the subway and sitting next to her is Hood. Hood taps her knee with his, and this is apparently Morse code for get out. And when the stop arrives, Nia does. And as the subway doors close behind her, it's revealed that she is in the hellscape with a large eye. And then from the ground, she's dragged down and blood gushes out as she's pulled down. There is a lot I want to say about this one, as I believe it relates heavily to Nia, Hood, and the next character we're presented with later. So I'm going to hang back on talking about this one for now, but know that it relates heavily to my theory that I have later on. We're shown what I believe to be a mental institution from the outside, with two faces being seen from two barred windows. We're then shown Nia walking down the hall. She sees some Japanese kanji on the wall that translates to run, but she ignores this and then keeps walking, only to cut to black before a flash of someone being injected with something and screaming is shown. A hot monitor behind them, and then we're shown the outside of the facility again, but this time with three faces. I think this is something that Nia has conjured up in her head, where she is subconsciously telling herself to run and leave the institution, as they are clearly abusing their patients. However, she doesn't run because she is either heavily medicated and isn't thinking straight despite what her mind is telling her, or knows that there is no use in running, as she has to endure the pain for the time being. We open up this video with something red in the darkness, and it's revealed to be a tongue of this girl, who isn't Nia but another character named Kat. The difference between them is that Nia never wears a spiked choker and Kat does, while also not wearing a black and white striped shirt. However, I also have a theory of my own if this is Nia and not a different character, but I'm going to refer to them as Kat, which I will explain why later. We are then shown dead trees, and we're shown back to Kat, whose playful expression disappears, and then for a split second she appears to be horrified. And we're then shown Hood riding the elevator down to hell. We're then shown Nia atop a building with Japanese kanji written on the side of the building that translates to sorrow. The scene changes to show Hood in the hellscape and looking at what I can only assume to be Kat's body on a crucifix. For the third time, there is a lot to unpack here, and again, I'll save it for later once we reach the theory part of the video and explain why I possibly believe that Kat may be a different character, or if it isn't a different character, explain why this is Nia. In this video, Nia is showering while she's getting shampoo in her hair. She hears something and stops before continuing, and we are then shown another figure in there with her, this one appearing to be another woman, looking straight out of the ring. I can't really say what this one is about. Some in the comments think that this may be akin to taking a shower in a mental facility and how you're not supposed to shower alone. If I had to guess, this may be related to the fear of public showers and the fear of being watched, or the belief of being watched. Trust me, I remember a few public showers in certain places where old men just took off everything and took showers in the stalls butt-ass naked, which always made me feel very uncomfortable. Now I'm going to give a big warning here, as this one can be disturbing as it shows what is clearly SA. So if you feel uncomfortable at this part, please skip to the next part. Once again, please skip if you feel uncomfortable at this part. If not, we're going to continue, but please make sure you skip if you feel that you're going to be uncomfortable. The video starts out with Nia on her bed with an expression that seems calm and relaxed. But then it cuts and we're shown Nia's shirt ripped open and her eyes glassy, and from her movement we can clearly see what is happening. It cuts again and we're shown Nia once more. This time there's blood on the sheets and her eyes are empty and dead. Yes, A continues. I'm not going to replay the scene again as it is disturbing imagery. It's no doubt uncomfortable for you, and it was very uncomfortable for me to even talk about. I'm going to say that I have never been a victim of SA, and I can't imagine what it's like. I can only hope that those who have had SA happen to them have gotten help and have overcome what is a terrible, terrible thing. Some believe these videos are an outlet and a way for the creator to deal with the trauma of the things that they have been through. But there's no evidence of any of this, as icantsleep has no social media, and the only thing that on the YouTube page being a link to their Patreon. But on the other hand, this may just be an animated horror short that deals with a heavy subject. I don't think people should be asking icantsleep about if they were SA before. If they were, there's no need to pry, even know, as it is none of our business. I don't know what this could even mean, and it's clear what this is. So I think it's time to move on. The video begins and Nia is shown holding out her hand, trying to catch snowflakes. She managed to capture one, and it appears to cut her hand. We then see a red streak cut across the screen, and Nia is on the ground. Her wrist slit as blood leaks out of it, and as she bleeds out on the snowy ground, 2 feet appear behind her as a figure, most likely Hood, watches her, and then we're shown a red text on a black screen that says, "This nightmare is just beginning." I think what's going on is that icantsleep is telling the audience that there's more horror to come, or perhaps this is Hood speaking and telling Nia that this is only the beginning of her torture, not letting her escape it so easily. The video starts out with Nia looking at us, only for the darkness to take shape behind Nia and become Hood, who sets his hand on Nia's shoulder, and barbed wire wraps around Nia's throat and tightens, causing her to bleed and die. However, she wakes up and is revealed to be a dream. It's here that my theory is starting to become clear, as I believe that this is what Nia feels when she's around Hood. who I believe may have been Nia's attacker, but also maybe Nia herself. We'll get into that a bit later. The video starts out with Nia in a clean room in a clean bath, only for it to cut and show the tub filled with blood, pills on one side and a razor on the other end. Nia's head appears out of the water as she just stares back at us with glassy eyes. This appears to be Nia's attempt at another S-word attempt, and I can only assume that this might be a part of Nia's suffering. She wants to escape, but can't. I think that in Crimson Snow, it was clearly Hood's feet, and he was there to save Nia, but only because he may be prolonging her suffering. As we've seen before, he was in hell, and I believe he is Nia's personal torturer and monster. The video is a minute long, and Nia's arm is in a cast and her right eye is covered up. Nia continues to slam her casted arm against the table until it eventually breaks, and Nia appears to be shocked. The reason I bring this up is that this isn't horrifying, and it is one of the few times Nia appears not to be tortured. So, yay for me, because I feel bad for Nia every time, so this small break of where she no longer appears to be in pain or being tortured is somewhat good for the soul. The video starts out with Nia sitting on a beach, before a quick flash in the sky happens and the words "You can't escape" appear, before returning to normal. In the distance from what appears to be a graveyard, footsteps appear and walk toward Nia, and they stop right behind her. A heart monitor flashes and Nia is torn apart, and it appears that who or whatever did that to her took something from inside of her and walked off with it, based on the blood trail with the footprints. I believe that the words "you can't escape" are of course directed at Nia, telling her that she can't simply escape this nightmare through means of self-harm, such as previous attempts. And I also believe that this relates to sins of the flesh, as it might be symbolic that Nia's attacker took something from her, of course, both physically and mentally. The video starts out with a hole pulsating, and Nia stands in front of it, and the blood around it grows. Nia then feels pain in her stomach, so she lifts up her shirt only to see a spiral where her navel should be, and then it closes only to reveal an eye as it looks up at Nia. I believe I may know what this is about. However, I don't think I should discuss it in this part of the video, as we've already dealt with one heavy subject. I don't feel comfortable just yet discussing another that is also just as heavy. The video begins with the hand of Hood handing Nia a rose, and for a split second the screen turns black and it seems the thorns of the rose stab into Nia's hand, and the red color of the rose drains and fills up Nia, who seems happy for once. I think this isn't as bad as some people might believe it is. I believe that the rose symbolizes the love and support that we, the audience, have for I Can't Sleep, thus the title, For Me. This one's a YouTube short, and in the short, Nia stands over a bucket and she drains the red from her as a rainbow pours into a bucket that is labeled For You. This video is clearly related to For Me, and I also believe that this isn't as bad as it seems. I think that I Can't Sleep is telling us that they put that love and support that we've given them into the animations that they create. They pour their creativity, the rainbow, into these animations for us, hence the title. It's here that makes me kind of lean toward all of this simply being dark animations with dark and tragic story hidden within it. But once again, that's merely speculation. The video starts out with a clown telling Nia, who has red hair now, to laugh over and over again until it seems Nia apparently turns demonic and kills the clown, Nia reverting back to her dark hair and her eyes, now black. I think that this is a clear hatred to people who say that people going through hard times should laugh or smile, people who don't understand the true suffering of what certain people are going through. I know that I hate those people who think they understand and tell me to try and smile more and move on when it isn't that easy. I also find it interesting that Nia's hair was red in this video, possibly hinting at the fact that this is her natural hair color. Or maybe it could symbolize her anger as she has it while the clown is alive, but once he's dead, the red vanishes, possibly along with her anger. Also, the clown's laughter is a little freaky. Here, I'll play a sample. Fucking clowns, man. All right, let's move on. But I found this image, so yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. The video starts out with the panning of a city, and the words on the building ask, "Are you feeling happiness, peace, freedom?" And emerging from the corner is Nia, with a red balloon around her neck and floating across the city. And eventually, her body stops at one building where Hood stands atop it. Once again, it seems like another attempt by Nia to take her own life, but once again, Hood appears as well, clearly there to somehow revive her and prolong her suffering. The video starts out with Nia in bed, her eyes slowly closing as she drifts off into sleep. As the camera closes in, we hear a wet, crunching sound, and Nia's eyes open wide before she looks down and then drifts back off into sleep. But then the sound is heard again, and Nia's eyes widen with horror as she looks around, only for her to shake as the blood spews from her ear and a red tentacle-like thing comes out from her ear, and the video ends there. This may tell us that there's something inside of Nia, but not in the physical sense, of course. I believe it may be more mental, but then again, that's simply just a guess. Before I begin, I have to once again say that this is very disturbing, so please, if you feel uncomfortable, please skip to the next part. I may also just blur it out just for safety on my end. The video begins with Nia's eyes opening, and she looks horrified as it's revealed that she's chained up, and unfortunately, her skirt and top seem to be way too short, but that's not even the worst part. As from the ground, a spike appears and raises up, and Nia screams in terror as it gets higher, and she urinates out of fear, and the spear then shoots up, and the blood spews out. The spike shoots up more before it comes out of her mouth. Once again, another disturbing one, and another that I believe may relate back to sins of the flesh, and that's all I can infer, as I don't want to dive too heavily on what this might mean just yet. The video is just a loop of Nia and Hood apparently descending in what only could be hell, with different shots of them, one of them being even a close-up of Nia's face. And she does bear resemblance to Kat, which I think means that Kat isn't a different person, and I was stupid to believe so. And that it was actually Nia and he's here, and that's pretty much all I can infer from this video. Nia sits on the subway with a hooded figure who isn't Hood, and Nia's on her phone not paying much attention until she sees the figure looking at her. And then the figure begins to distort, and Nia looks around for an exit. She then used her phone camera to take a photo of the figure, only to be scared when the figure isn't being shown on the camera. Oddly enough, this is one of the few videos that icantsleep has commented on, and the comment says, "Scary old woman," telling us that the figure is an old woman. This video has led some people to have theorized that this may mean that Nia is actually schizophrenic and that everything that has been happening has been in her head, but I don't think so. I do think this may be in Nia's head, but not related to schizophrenia at all. The video starts out with a shot of Nia's room, and then we see her in a chair with a coffee next to her. And then she appears tired and even slowly falls asleep. She then appears to wake up in a red hallway, and something in front of her appears and slowly walks toward her. And at first I couldn't tell who or what it was, but the more I watched, the more I believed it's Hood. However, before he could get too close, Nia wakes up, and she still appears tired and almost closes her eyes, but stops herself, but falls asleep again. It appears again, and he gets closer, but Nia wakes up for a second time and looks at the coffee and quickly makes herself a cup, and appears to be now wide awake, but also twitchy. But it fails, and Nia falls back asleep as Hood finally gets too close, and Nia appears to have been scared to death, her face resembling the old woman from the last video. Now, I Can't Sleep also commented on this video saying, "When my eyelids close, my pupils, I see terrible things." I believe this may be telling us that Nia is plagued by nightmares, one specifically being of Hood coming to torture her more. Of course, this makes sense, as Hood, or his presence, has been seen lately. The video starts out with a figure atop a building, and the building appears to have something on it, but I can't make it out. We get a close-up and we see that the figure is Nia, however, looking much more horrifying. She hovers her foot over the edge only for a sudden flash to take us away from the previous scene, and we are then shown Nia apparently crucified with a crucifix either branded on her flesh or flesh ripped off in the symbol of a crucifix, and the video ends there. Once again, for the third time, I Can't Sleep leaves a pinned comment saying, "It won't end until you understand." Now, I don't know what I Can't Sleep is telling us in this, but perhaps there is an actual story in these videos, and that there is something in these videos, and that the only way to save Nia, in a sense, is to figure out what this all means. Like I've said before, some people believe these videos to be an outlet for the creator to deal with their own trauma. Some believe this just to be edgy, but I doubt that. While some believe that this is just simply an art channel about making horror with certain heavy subjects, which I can see may be true, whichever may be the case, it seems that until we figure out what is happening and understand what it all means, the nightmare that Nia faces won't stop. The video starts out with seeing some drawings, one of them appearing to be Gur from Invader Zim, and these ones seem to be rather childish, but as the scene continues and we pan down, the images get cruder and darker, as there's clearly a Bible, eyes, a horrifying face, and an angel. Eventually, we see what appears to be half of a face. It's a doll, and we then see something up in the top opening as the light shines on the doll's face. The doll's eyes move to look at the light. One thing to notice about the doll is that it looks like someone is stuffed inside of it. Hands then appear, and that's when we see Nia, looking like Sadako from the Ringu, and the video ends there. I have no idea what this could mean, but I do know that the doll was no doubt important to Nia, perhaps something that represented her innocence, or represents her in a much darker sense. I thought I was finished with the video and I could move on to the theory, but nope. I Can't Sleep released another video on October 15th, 2023, and so I checked it out, and I believe that possibly reveals what may have happened in the hospital and how this may affect the story. The video begins with Nia looking ghastly as her eyes are wide open and she looks to the doorway of the hospital room, where a figure stands. This one appears to not be Hood, but a figure simply cloaked in darkness. The figure then moves to another patient, only for the patient to be killed, leaving a bloodstain. And then it's revealed that the figure was a doctor, now looking at Nia's sleeping form and breathing heavily. Take a listen. With that video, I think it's finally time to reveal what I believe may be going on within these animations. I believe that Nia comes from a rough and broken childhood, and while their past isn't so clear, we can infer a few things. Nia was able to see certain things as a child, things that haunted her and scared her to the core. But as I said, I don't believe this to be schizophrenia. I believe this simply is her imagination, the manifestation of fears of monsters that parents would tell their children about. Images of monsters she conjured up in her own head. Monsters that lived under the bed or were there when she closed her eyes, or monsters that lurked outside of her windows. This is why I said in Underwater that Hood is fear. Fear that torments Nia through her childhood and also, most likely, her teenage years. Hood represents the simple childhood fears of monsters, but as time progresses and Nia suffers more, the torment and horror become more terrifying. As she approaches her early teens, Nia begins to see the world in a far more darker light. She perceives her period as a fountain of blood and her guts spilling out of her, and it's Hood, the fear of something she doesn't understand in her young mind, who gives Nia the present of her period. It's Hood who's there when Nia's alone in the bathroom, who peeks over the stall and peers down at her, the fear of being watched and peeked on. It's Hood who walks the halls of hell and is the one seemingly tormenting Nia. Hood is Nia's tormentor, her fear. And as I've said before, Hood is most likely a representation of Nia's attacker, the very person who assaulted her in sins of the flesh. However, Hood is also Nia. Victims of abuse in SA often blame themselves for what happened, when in reality they shouldn't, and yet they still do. When I said that Hood is Nia's tormentor, I was right. Our greatest and cruelest tormentor is usually ourselves. It's Nia who puts herself in this hell, hence why the Hood's silhouette in Their Coming bears a resemblance to Nia, because that is Nia. It's Nia who blames herself for what happened to her and continues to torment herself, continuously pushing herself back into hell. However, Nia did seek help to try and move on from her SA, and with her fragile mental state, checked herself into a mental facility, and it was here she thought she could get help. However, that wasn't the case, as they clearly abused her and used her as a test subject for whatever they were doing, or in some weird way, Nia willingly went along with these experiments, believing that they could make her trauma go away, but instead messed with her mind more. Either Nia was abused by the staff and the place she thought she was safe wasn't, and so she tries to end her suffering, or, well, the monsters we see torturing Nia are simply in her head due to side effects of the experiments. However, Nia tries to take her life only to be saved by Hood. It's here that I don't think Hood is just fear and the representation of Nia's attacker, but now I think that Hood is Nia's anger at the world. In Crimson Snow, Hood appears just as Nia slit her wrist and saves her life, and in Freedom, he's on the building where Nia's hanging body stops at, and no doubt saves her as well. I believe that Hood, in this case, represents the people who stopped Nia from taking her life, however, not out of malice or sadistic reasons, but because they wanted to save her. So I believe that the Hood we see in these videos are actually just regular people who saved Nia's life, yet Nia sees them as bad people because they won't let her escape the cruel reality around her. Nia sees them as the cruel hooded figure who prolongs her suffering and simply doesn't let her escape, as Hood, or Nia's shadow self, is telling Nia that this nightmare is just beginning, the nightmare of life. Yet, the horror doesn't end there. After Sins of the Flesh, certain videos caught my eye that may reveal what happened after Nia's SA. In You Can Escape, Nia's torn apart, but she appears to be torn open from the stomach, and something from inside of her was clearly taken. But what? Well, the answer to that was in Whole. In Whole, we are clearly seeing what is the inside of a certain female body part, and the part where Nia feels pain is in her stomach. No doubt this is talking about abortion. Certain and common physical signs of a surgical abortion are period-type pains, stomach cramps, bleeding. All clear signs that Nia shows in the video. The hole bleeds and no doubt it's bleeding, and Nia experiences stomach cramps. Of course, I believe that the abortion of Nia's child is due to it being the attacker's child and that Nia regrets it, possibly because of religion. Nia's been crucified 2 or 3 times, possibly her idea of punishment for the so-called sin of abortion. Punishment is also no doubt related to sins of the flesh, with the spike no doubt a representation for a guy's you-know-what. That it going through Nia was no doubt the pain she felt. It's also very possible that Nia was a virgin and that the attacker had taken her first time, and that punishment is a representation of what Nia felt during the attack. Videos like Subway 2, I Can't Sleep, and Punishment 2 show more of Nia's torment. In the Subway 2, Nia is being haunted by an old woman, and I think that Nia may be related to this scary old woman, possibly being Nia's grandmother. No doubt someone heavily religious, someone that would have scorned and despised Nia for her abortion. I Can't Sleep no doubt see Nia back in what is clearly her own personal hell, with Hood getting closer to torture her, or, in reality, Nia continuing to blame herself for every bad thing that has happened to her. And Punishment 2 is no doubt another idea of Nia tormenting herself, contemplating her suicide but knowing she's going to be punished for the sin of suicide. Meanwhile, in I Miss You, I said that the doll was something that may have represented Nia's innocence. However, I also said that it may represent Nia in a much darker sense, as the doll could be Nia herself, a representation of how she is used, played with, and then tossed aside, and that it's Nia stuffed in the doll, and the figure we see looking in the hole is not Nia, but possibly the grandmother. I think sleep paralysis may just be another instance of abuse at the hospital or another side effect of the experiments done on her at the hospital. For now, that's all I can gather from the main videos, but as I said, I'll probably make a second video on I Can't Sleep covering their 2 other series on their channel and see what else we could possibly find. But for now, that's the end of this video. It's spooky season, guys, and you know what that means? It means scary videos. And of course, I was going to do analog horror, but it seems like everybody's doing that nowadays, so I decided to do something else. Hence, this video. Like I said, I hope to cover I Can't Sleep's 2 other series on their channel in a later video as well. This video was indeed something. I enjoyed making it, even though I had to talk about some very heavy subjects that were not easy to talk about, as I am no way qualified to talk about them at all. I hope to cover more horror-related channels and videos in the future. I may do analog horror in the future as well. A few other tubers such as Wendigoon, Wowman, and Reapostrola have covered analog horror that I love, such as The Monument Mythos, The Vendetta Catalog, The Children Under the Basement, and Gemini Home Entertainment. Though none of them have covered Vita Carnis, so I may do that maybe before Wendigoon does, because I kind of want to beat him at that. Or I may cover some digital horror, such as Lacey's Games, which is interesting and fucking creepy. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video because it took me forever to make, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Fuck, not Twitter, I mean X. Fucking stupid change. Anyway, see you guys later.